In the final days of Atlantis, when the crystal towers still pierced the clouds and the sacred geometries hummed with power, the High Council taught one truth above all others. They knew that without this single law, even the most vivid vision, the most burning desire, the most perfect alignment with Source itself, would wither and fade into nothing. You see, my friend, you have been told only half the truth about manifestation. The teachers, the gurus, the well-meaning guides of this modern age, they speak of visualization. They speak of belief. They speak of raising your vibration. And yes, these things matter. But they have forgotten the most crucial element, the one that turns ethereal dreams into solid gold reality. They have forgotten the law of inspired action. This is the secret the Atlanteans carried to their watery graves. The hidden cipher that explains why some souls manifest miracles, while others, despite years of spiritual practice, remain trapped in the same cycles of struggle and longing. I want you to imagine yourself standing in an ancient temple, its walls carved from living crystal, as I share with you what was nearly lost forever. Because by the end of our time together, you will understand not just what this law is, but how to wield it with the same mastery as those who once walked between worlds. The golden steps await. Let us begin. Picture this. 13,000 years ago, when the Earth herself was younger and the veil between dimensions gossamer thin, there existed a civilization that had learned to dance with the very fabric of reality. Atlantis was no mere legend. It was a living testament to what becomes possible when beings remember their true nature and align with the cosmic laws that govern all manifestation. In the heart of the great city, rising like a mountain from the center of the continent, stood the Temple of Celestial Harmonics. Its spiraling towers were cut from a single, massive crystal that had grown from the Earth's core. A crystal so pure it could amplify thought itself and transform intention into matter. Here, the High Council would gather at dawn each day, not to rule through force or fear, but to demonstrate the sacred principles that kept their entire civilization in alignment with abundance, peace, and unlimited creative power. The leader of this council was a woman known as Aria, the Lightweaver. She had mastered what they called the 7 eternal laws, the cosmic principles that govern how energy moves from the realm of pure potential into the world of form. But of all these laws, there was one she taught with special reverence, one that she called the Golden Key. For without it, the other 6 laws remained powerless. This was the law of inspired action. Now, I want you to understand something crucial about the Atlanteans. They were not sitting in meditation halls all day, lost in blissful visions. They were builders, creators, engineers of both the physical and metaphysical realms. They understood that the universe is not a static thing, but a living, breathing dance of energy in constant motion. And they knew that to participate in this dance, to become co-creators with the infinite, they had to move with the rhythm of inspired action. Picture Aria standing before a young initiate named Theron, who had come to her with a burning desire to heal the waters that were beginning to show signs of pollution from mining operations. "Master," young Theron asked, "I have visualized the waters crystal clear. I have felt the gratitude of the fish and the dolphins. I have aligned my heart with the frequency of pure, life-giving water. Yet nothing changes. What am I missing?" Aria smiled with the patience of one who had asked this same question in her own youth. "Come," she said, leading him to the great crystal that formed the temple's heart. "Place your hands here and tell me, does this crystal simply think the light into being?" Theron pressed his palms against the warm, living stone. Immediately, patterns of light began to flow through its structure, creating mandalas of color that danced and shifted with each breath. "No, Master, a crystal receives the light from the sun." And then it paused, understanding beginning to dawn. It moves the light. It transforms it. It acts upon it. "Precisely," Aria said. "And so must you. The universe has infinite power to support your vision, but it needs a channel through which to flow. It needs your hands, your voice, your movement through the world. It needs your inspired action." That very day, Theron didn't return to his meditation cushion. Instead, he gathered a team of water engineers. He spoke with the mining guilds about new methods of extraction. He created a network of healers to work with the water elementals. He took inspired action. Within one cycle of the moon, the waters began to clear. This is how the Atlanteans lived, my friend. They understood that the spiritual and physical realms are not separate kingdoms, but one seamless tapestry. They knew that to manifest anything, from the healing of water to the construction of cities that floated on air, required the marriage of vision and action, of dream and deed. In their schools, children learned this principle through a simple exercise. Each morning, they would plant a seed in their garden. But they wouldn't just plant it with their hands. They would plant it with their entire being. First, they would envision the full-grown plant, its height, its flowers, its fruits. They would feel the joy it would bring to those who would taste its nourishment. They would align their hearts with the plant's highest potential. But then, and this was the crucial part, they would take action. They would water it. They would place it in sunlight. They would tend the soil. They would do whatever the plant needed to thrive. And as they worked with their hands, they would listen. Listen for the subtle impulses that arose from their connection to the plant's essence. Perhaps they would feel inspired to sing to it. Perhaps they would sense it needed a different location. Perhaps they would receive an insight about a natural fertilizer. This was inspired action, action that arose not from forcing or striving, but from a deep attunement to the intelligence that flows between all things. But as the centuries passed, something began to shift in Atlantis. The people grew intoxicated by their own power. They began to believe they could manifest without regard for harmony, without listening to the greater wisdom that connected all life. They started taking action, yes, but it was no longer inspired. It was driven by ego, by greed, by the desire to dominate rather than co-create. And slowly, tragically, Their civilization began to collapse. In the final days, as the continent shook and the waters rose, Aria gathered the remaining masters in the great temple one last time. "The knowledge must not die with us," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of what was to come. "But how can we preserve it for a future age when humanity will be ready to learn again?" The solution they found was both simple and profound. They would encode the 7 eternal laws into the very fabric of human consciousness itself, into stories that would survive as myths, into symbols that would resurface across cultures, into an inner knowing that would awaken when the time was right. And so, as Atlantis sank beneath the waves, the masters released their final gift to humanity, the truth that even when the outer teachings are lost, the wisdom itself can never be destroyed. It lives on, waiting to be remembered. Now, my friend, let me draw back the veil and share with you what the law of inspired action truly is. At its essence, this law states that manifestation is not a passive process of thinking and waiting, but an active dance between your inner world and your outer expression. It is the principle that transforms possibility into reality through the bridge of aligned movement. Think of it this way. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a vast river, and on the other side waits everything you have ever desired. The river is not an obstacle, it is a pathway. But to cross it, you cannot simply stand on the shore and visualize yourself on the other side. You must build a bridge, and you must build it one plank at a time, with your own hands, guided by the blueprint that comes from your deepest knowing. This is inspired action, movement that arises not from desperation or forcing, but from a profound alignment between your soul's calling and your physical expression in the world. But here is where most people in your modern age have become confused. They have been taught that action means struggle, that if you're not sweating, striving, and suffering, you're not really working toward your goals. This is precisely backwards. True inspired action feels effortless, even when it requires great energy. It feels like you are being pulled forward by an invisible current rather than pushing against an immovable wall. It feels like play, like joy, like the most natural thing in the world. Let me share with you the 3 qualities that distinguish inspired action from ordinary action. The first is timing. Inspired action arises in perfect timing, not according to your ego's impatient demands. It comes when the energy is aligned, when the doors are ready to open, when the universe has prepared the way. You might feel the impulse to make a phone call at exactly the moment the person you need to reach is available. You might be guided to visit a bookstore just as the book you need appears on the new releases table. This is not coincidence. This is the intelligence of aligned timing. The second is ease. While inspired action may require effort and focus, it never feels like you are swimming upstream. There is a quality of flow, of rightness, of being carried by a force greater than your individual will. When you are taking inspired action, Obstacles become stepping stones. Challenges become opportunities. Setbacks become course corrections that lead you to something even better than what you originally envisioned. The third is joy. This is perhaps the most reliable indicator of all. Inspired action, even when it involves difficult or challenging tasks, is infused with a quality of joy, excitement, or deep satisfaction. It feels like you are expressing something essential about who you are. It feels like you are painting with the brushes of your own soul. Now, contrast this with the way most people approach manifestation in your current age. They create vision boards and repeat affirmations, which is beautiful. They meditate and align their vibration, which is necessary. But then they sit back and wait for the universe to deliver their desires like a cosmic pizza service. Or, on the other extreme, they throw themselves into frantic activity, believing that if they just work hard enough, hustle smart enough, force their way through enough obstacles, they can make their dreams happen through sheer determination. Both approaches miss the mark because they miss the crucial element, the intelligence that flows between inner knowing and outer expression. You see, the universe is not a vending machine where you insert your visualizations and out pops your manifestation. Nor is it a harsh taskmaster that only rewards those who sacrifice their joy on the altar of achievement. The universe is a living, creative intelligence that is constantly offering you opportunities, insights, and openings. But you must be awake enough to recognize them and responsive enough to act upon them. Think of yourself as a sail on a ship. The wind, the cosmic energy, the universal support for your dreams is always blowing. But if you don't raise your sail, if you don't adjust your direction to catch that wind, you will remain motionless, no matter how strong the breeze becomes. Inspired action is the art of raising your sail at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right direction, so that the wind of universal support can carry you toward your destination with grace and power. I want you to understand something. You are not separate from the creative force of the universe. You are not a small, isolated being trying to manipulate vast cosmic energies through the power of positive thinking. You are a unique expression of that cosmic creativity. When you take inspired action, you are not forcing anything to happen. You are allowing the universe to express itself through you. This is what the Atlanteans understood so deeply. They knew that they were not separate from the crystal that amplified light, or the water that nourished life, or the earth that supported their magnificent cities. They were part of the same living system, each playing their unique role in the greater symphony of creation. And when you begin to operate from this understanding, when you begin to take action not from a sense of lack or separation, but from a deep knowing that you are the universe expressing itself as you, everything changes. Your actions become more effective because they are aligned with the natural flow of energy. Your efforts feel lighter because you are no longer working against the current. Your results become more miraculous because you are allowing forces far greater than your individual will to work through you. This, my friend, is the secret that was nearly lost when Atlantis fell beneath the waves. This is the golden key that unlocks all the other laws of manifestation. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman living in your modern world who discovered this law in a way that changed everything. For 3 years, Sarah had been trying to manifest her dream of opening a healing center. She had spent countless hours visualizing the perfect space, the high ceilings filled with natural light, the treatment rooms humming with peace, the garden where clients could walk among healing herbs. She had repeated affirmations until her mind was dizzy with positive thoughts. She had created vision boards that covered every wall of her apartment. She had attended workshops and read every book on manifestation she could find. And yet, year after year, nothing changed. Her savings account remained stubbornly small. The perfect location never appeared. The investors she approached showed polite interest, but never committed. She began to wonder if she was doing something wrong, if she simply wasn't meant to fulfill this dream, if the universe had forgotten about her desires. What Sarah didn't understand, what no one had ever taught her, was that she was trying to manifest from only half of the equation. She had mastered the inner work beautifully. Her vision was crystal clear. Her emotional alignment was strong. Her belief in the possibility was unshakable. But she was waiting for inspired action to find her, rather than learning to recognize and respond to it when it appeared. One day, frustrated and nearly ready to give up, Sarah decided to take a walk to clear her head. As she wandered through a neighborhood she rarely visited, she noticed a small building with a for lease sign in the window. Something about it called to her, not because it matched her vision perfectly, but because something inside her said, "Pay attention." Instead of dismissing this impulse as she had done so many times before, Sarah decided to call the number on the sign. The rent was higher than she had planned, but the owner mentioned that he was looking for someone to help revitalize the neighborhood and might be willing to work out a creative arrangement. This led to a conversation about Sarah's vision for a healing center, which led to an introduction to the owner's wife, who happened to be a massage therapist looking for a space to practice, which led to a meeting with a local acupuncturist who had been dreaming of collaborating with other healers. Within 6 months, Sarah's healing center was open, not exactly as she had envisioned it, but as something even better, a thriving community space that supported multiple practitioners and served far more people than she had ever imagined possible. What shifted for Sarah was her understanding of what inspired action actually looks like. She had been waiting for a giant, obvious sign, a benefactor appearing with a check, the perfect building falling into her lap at an impossibly low price, a clear and unmistakable message from the universe saying, "This is your moment." But inspired action rarely works that way. It usually comes as a whisper, not a shout, as a gentle impulse, not a lightning bolt, as a subtle invitation to take one small step and then another, trusting that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. Let me share with you the most common reasons people fail to manifest their desires, even when they understand the other laws of creation. They mistake forcing for action. When their visualizations don't immediately produce results, they panic and begin to push. They send dozens of emails to potential investors. They apply for every opportunity, whether it feels aligned or not. They exhaust themselves trying to make things happen through sheer effort. But forced action actually pushes opportunities away because it comes from a vibration of desperation rather than trust. They wait for certainty before moving. They want to know exactly how their manifestation will unfold before they take the first step. They want guaranteed outcomes and risk-free paths. But the universe rarely reveals the entire staircase at once. It shows you just the next step, requiring you to develop faith and trust in the unfolding process. They ignore their intuitive guidance. In your modern world, you have been taught to trust only logic and reason. But inspired action often defies logical analysis. It might feel right to take a class that seems unrelated to your goals, or to strike up a conversation with a stranger in a coffee shop, or to change directions completely based on a feeling you can't quite explain. Those who manifest most powerfully have learned to honor these subtle promptings. They take action only when they feel motivated. They believe that inspired action must always feel exciting and energizing. But sometimes, inspired action feels quiet, ordinary, even mundane. Sometimes it means doing the dishes, so your space is clear for creativity. Sometimes it means having a difficult conversation to clear old energy. Sometimes it means rest, or reflection, or simply being present to what is arising. They give up too soon. When the first few actions don't produce dramatic results, they assume they're on the wrong path. But manifestation often works like a spiral staircase. You may feel like you're going in circles, but actually you're moving upward with each revolution. Each action builds upon the last, creating momentum that eventually reaches a tipping point where everything seems to happen at once. You see, my friend, the law of inspired action requires something that your culture often discourages: the willingness to move without knowing exactly where you're going. It requires trust in an intelligence greater than your logical mind. It requires faith that the universe is not only supporting your highest good, but actively conspiring to bring it about in ways that surpass your limited imagination. The Atlanteans understood this completely. They knew that the human mind, no matter how brilliant, can only perceive a tiny fraction of the infinite possibilities available in any moment. So they learned to partner with the cosmic intelligence that sees all possibilities simultaneously, that knows which doors are ready to open and which timing will serve the highest good of all. This is why their manifestations seemed so effortless, so miraculous. They weren't trying to control outcomes through force or manipulation. They were learning to dance with the cosmic flow, allowing themselves to be guided by an intelligence that operates far beyond the realm of ordinary thinking. Now, let me share with you the actual method the Atlanteans used to master the law of inspired action. These are the 5 sacred steps that Aria the Lightweaver taught to all initiates who wish to become conscious co-creators with the universe. I have adapted these ancient practices for your modern world, but their essence remains unchanged. When you follow these steps consistently, you will find that your ability to recognize and respond to inspired action becomes as natural as breathing. The first step is what the Atlanteans called the sacred pause, a daily practice of conscious stillness that creates space for divine guidance to emerge. Every morning, before the demands of your day began to pull your attention outward, you would spend at least 20 minutes in what they called receptive meditation. This is different from the concentration-style meditation often taught in your time. Instead of focusing your mind on a particular object or mantra, you would allow your awareness to become like a still pond, open and receptive to whatever arose. In Atlantis, there was a master builder named Kale, who was responsible for constructing the floating gardens that provided food for the entire city. These gardens were a marvel of both engineering and spiritual science, massive platforms that remained suspended in the air through a combination of crystal technology and conscious intention. When Kale first received this assignment, he was overwhelmed. How could he possibly create something that had never been built before? Where would he even begin? His mentor, an elder named Zara, taught him the practice of the sacred pause. Each morning, she said, before you think about crystals or platform designs or weight distributions, you must first become empty. You must create space within yourself for the wisdom that wants to emerge. So Kale began each day sitting quietly in his garden, allowing his mind to become still and open. And in that stillness, insights would arise. He would see, as if in a gentle vision, the precise arrangement of crystals needed to create anti-gravitational fields. He would feel the exact vibrational frequency required to keep the platforms stable. He would receive, as clear as spoken words, guidance about which materials would serve the highest good. In your modern world, this practice might look like sitting quietly with your journal each morning and asking, what wants to emerge through me today? Or, what is the next right step for my highest path? Then simply listening, without forcing answers or analyzing what arises. You might receive an impulse to call someone you haven't spoken to in months. You might feel drawn to explore a particular neighborhood or attend an event that seems unrelated to your goals. You might sense that it's time to clean out your closet or reorganize your workspace. These seemingly small promptings are often the first movement of inspired action. They are the universe's way of beginning to arrange the external world to match your internal vision. For the next 7 days, spend 20 minutes each morning in receptive meditation. Ask for guidance about your next steps. Then simply listen without judgment. Write down any impulses, insights, or gentle promptings that arise, no matter how small or unusual they seem. The second step involves learning to recognize the specific feeling signature of inspired action versus forced action. The Atlanteans understood that emotion is not just psychological experience. It is actually a sophisticated guidance system that tells you whether you are aligned with the flow of universal energy or working against it. There was a young woman in Atlantis named Lyra who possessed an extraordinary gift for healing, but she struggled to know when and how to use it. Sometimes, her healing sessions would produce miraculous results, Cancerous tumors would dissolve, broken bones would mend in hours, emotional trauma would release completely. But other times, despite using the same techniques, nothing would happen at all. This inconsistency frustrated Lyra until she began studying with a master healer named Thane, who taught her about the bridge of feeling. Healing energy, Thane explained, is always available. But like water, it can only flow through an open channel. When you try to force healing from a sense of ego or urgency, you create resistance in your own energy field. But when you allow healing to flow through you from a place of love and trust, you become transparent to the cosmic healing force. Thane taught Lyra to pause before each healing session and check the feeling tone in her body. If she felt anxious, pushy, or attached to a particular outcome, she would take time to reconnect with love and surrender before proceeding. If she felt a sense of openness, flow, and joyful anticipation, she would know the channel was clear. As Lyra practiced this awareness, her healing work became consistently powerful. She learned to trust the bridge of feeling as an infallible guide to when action would be effective and when patience was required. In your manifestation work, you can use this same principle. Inspired action always feels aligned, flowing, and energizing, even when it involves effort or challenge. Forced action feels heavy, resistant, or draining. Here's how to tell the difference. Inspired action feels like a sense of excitement or anticipation, even if the task is ordinary. Energy that flows easily, without strain or struggle. Timing that feels natural and unhurried. Clarity about what needs to be done, even if you don't know why. A quality of lightness or joy infusing the activity. Forced action feels like anxiety, urgency, or desperation driving the activity. Having to push through resistance, both internal and external. Timing that feels rushed or pressured. Confusion about direction or second-guessing your choices. A sense of heaviness, obligation, or shooting yourself into action. Before taking any significant action toward your manifestation goals, pause and check the feeling tone in your body. If it feels heavy or forced, wait. If it feels light and flowing, proceed with trust. Keep a record of your actions and their outcomes to develop sensitivity to these subtle differences. The third step teaches you to follow what the Atlanteans called the golden thread, the subtle chain of synchronicities and opportunities that leads you toward your manifestation. This principle recognizes that the universe rarely delivers your desires in one dramatic event. Instead, it weaves them into reality through a series of connected experiences, each one leading naturally to the next. In the sacred archives of Atlantis, there lived a keeper of knowledge named Orion, whose deepest desire was to create a system of education that would help children remember their divine nature from an early age. For months, Orion meditated on this vision, but he felt overwhelmed by its scope. How could one person transform an entire educational system? Where would he even begin? One day, while walking through the crystal gardens, Orion noticed a small child who had become separated from her family and was crying. His first impulse was to find her parents quickly and continue with his walk. But something made him pause and sit with the child instead. As he comforted her, she began to tell him about her dreams, vivid visions of flying with dolphins and communicating with the crystal beings that lived in the temple walls. Orion realized that this child was naturally accessing the expanded awareness that most adults had forgotten. This encounter led him to spend more time with children, listening to their natural wisdom, which led him to develop simple games that honored their psychic gifts, which led him to share these games with other adults, which led to invitations to speak with teachers and parents. Within 2 years, Orion's educational innovations had spread throughout Atlantis, not because he had created a grand plan and forced it into manifestation, but because he had followed the golden thread of synchronicity from one inspired action to the next. In your world, the golden thread often appears as meaningful coincidences, unexpected encounters, or opportunities that seem to arise from nowhere. The key is learning to recognize these as guidance, rather than dismissing them as random events. For example, you might be seeking to start a new business, and in the same week, you overhear a conversation about exactly the product you want to create, receive an email about a business workshop, and run into an old friend who has experience in marketing. These are not coincidences. They are the golden thread, beginning to weave your manifestation into reality. Begin keeping a synchronicity journal. Record any meaningful coincidences, unexpected opportunities, or surprising connections that arise in your life. Look for patterns and threads that might be leading you toward your manifestations. When synchronicities occur, ask yourself, how might this be guiding me toward my highest path? The fourth step involves learning to discern divine timing, when to act, when to wait, and when to redirect your energy entirely. The Atlanteans understood that the universe operates according to cosmic rhythms and cycles that are far more sophisticated than linear time. They knew that trying to force manifestation outside of these natural rhythms was like trying to plant seeds in winter. Possible, perhaps, but requiring far more effort for far less abundant results. There was a master architect in Atlantis named Celeste, who was commissioned to design a new healing temple. She had received clear guidance about the temple's structure and purpose, and she was eager to begin construction immediately. But her mentor, an ancient woman known as the Timekeeper, counseled patience. The earth itself must be ready to receive this temple, the Timekeeper explained. The ley lines are still shifting from the mountain's recent growth. The crystal veins beneath the soil need time to stabilize. If you build now, the temple will stand, but it will not sing. For 6 months, Celeste practiced the art of waiting actively, continuing to refine her designs, gathering materials, training the construction teams, but not beginning the physical building. It felt like the longest 6 months of her life. But when the Timekeeper finally declared that the timing was aligned, everything flowed with miraculous ease. The crystals fit together, as if they had been made for each other. The workers moved in perfect synchronization. The entire temple was completed in half the time Celeste had originally estimated. More importantly, when the temple was finished, It possessed an almost magical quality of healing presence that surpassed anything Celeste had envisioned. Because it had been built in perfect timing, it had become more than the sum of its parts. In your manifestation work, sacred timing might mean waiting for the right market conditions before launching your business, or allowing a relationship to develop naturally rather than forcing intimacy, or staying in your current job until you feel genuinely called to your next step, rather than leaving from frustration. Learning to sense sacred timing is an art that develops with practice. Here are some indicators to guide you. It's time to act when opportunities begin appearing without excessive effort on your part. You feel a sense of inner excitement or anticipation about moving forward. External circumstances begin aligning to support your vision. You feel clear about your next steps, even if you can't see the entire path. It's time to wait when every attempt to move forward meets with unusual resistance. You feel confused or unclear about direction. You have a sense that something is cooking, but not yet ready. External circumstances seem to be shifting, but haven't stabilized. It's time to redirect when your original desire no longer feels alive or inspiring. A new opportunity arises that feels more aligned than your current path. You receive clear guidance to change direction. The external world is clearly indicating that your energy would be better used elsewhere. Begin each week by checking in with the energy around your major manifestation goals. Ask yourself, is this a time for action, patience, or redirection? Trust the first response you receive and align your weekly actions accordingly. The fifth and final step is perhaps the most challenging for minds trained in your current paradigm. Learning to take inspired action while remaining completely unattached to specific outcomes. This paradox, acting with full commitment while holding results lightly, was considered the pinnacle of mastery by the Atlantean teachers. In the last days of Atlantis, as the continent began to show signs of instability, there was a master named Aiden who received guidance to build boats, not just for himself and his family, but for anyone who chose to leave before the final catastrophe. Aiden poured his heart and soul into this project. He worked 18-hour days designing vessels that could navigate both ocean waters and interdimensional currents. He trained crews in advanced sailing techniques. He gathered supplies for long journeys to unknown lands. But as he worked, Aiden practiced the ultimate test of surrender. He built the boats with no attachment to whether people would actually use them. He offered passage to anyone who felt called to leave, but he didn't try to convince anyone who felt called to stay. He prepared for departure while remaining completely open to the possibility that he himself might be guided to remain with the continent to the end. Some of his fellow Atlanteans thought he had lost his mind. "How can you work so hard for something you might not even use?" they asked. Aiden smiled with the peace of one who had learned the deepest secret of manifestation. "I work not for the outcome, but for the joy of expressing my highest nature." The universe will use my efforts in whatever way serves the greatest good. My job is simply to act in alignment with love. When the final earthquakes began, some Atlanteans chose to leave in Aiden's boats, carrying seeds of the ancient wisdom to distant shores. Others chose to remain, completing their soul's purpose by witnessing the transformation of their beloved civilization. Both choices were perfect. Both served the greater plan. And Aiden himself? He was among those who sailed to new lands, becoming one of the seed planters who would ensure that the knowledge of conscious creation survived for future generations to rediscover. This is the ultimate mastery of inspired action, learning to act with full engagement while trusting completely in the wisdom of what unfolds. When you can work toward your dreams with joy and dedication, while remaining unattached to having them manifest in exactly the way you envision, you become a clear channel for miracles. You stop interfering with the universe's ability to deliver something even better than what your limited perspective could imagine. Choose one manifestation goal and experiment with the dance of surrender. Take all the inspired actions that feel aligned, but after each action, practice releasing the outcome completely. Say to yourself, I offer this effort to the highest good of all. May it be used in whatever way serves the greatest love. Notice how this shift in perspective affects both your experience of the action and the results that flow from it. As we near the end of our journey through this ancient wisdom, I want you to understand how the law of inspired action works in harmony with the other cosmic principles you have been learning. You see, none of the universal laws operate in isolation. They're like instruments in a cosmic orchestra, each playing their unique part in the symphony of manifestation. The law of vibration teaches you to align your emotional frequency with your desires. But without inspired action, that vibration remains potential energy, like a seed that contains the blueprint for a mighty tree, but never grows because it was never planted. The law of attraction draws opportunities and resources toward you based on your energetic resonance. But if you don't recognize and respond to these opportunities through inspired action, they simply flow past you like boats you never board. The law of correspondence ensures that your outer world mirrors your inner state. But inspired action is the mechanism through which this mirroring occurs, the bridge between the internal shift and the external change. Think of it this way. If manifestation were like painting a masterpiece, the other laws would be equivalent to preparing your canvas, choosing your colors, and receiving inspiration for your composition. But inspired action is the actual movement of the brush across the canvas. Without it, you have all the components of creation, but no creation itself. This is why the Atlanteans called it the Golden Key, not because it was more important than the other laws, but because it was the activating principle that brought all the others to life. In our next exploration together, we will dive deep into what the Atlanteans called the law of perpetual transmutation, the principle that governs how energy continuously transforms from one state to another, and how you can consciously direct these transformations to accelerate your manifestations beyond anything you thought possible. But for now, your work is to master this sacred dance between vision and action, between dream and deed, between the infinite potential of Source and the finite expression of your unique purpose. And so we return, my friend, to where we began, standing in the crystalline halls of ancient Atlantis, but now with eyes that can see what was always there. You are not separate from those ancient masters who once walked between worlds. You are not lesser than those who could transmute matter with thought and travel between dimensions as easily as walking from room to room. You are them, returned. You are the ancient wisdom wearing a modern form. You are the heir to everything they knew, everything they mastered, everything they encoded into the fabric of reality itself, before their continent sank beneath the waves. The law of inspired action was never lost. It was never truly forgotten. It has been waiting, patient as the stars themselves, for you to remember who you really are. Every impulse you have ever felt to create something beautiful, to heal something broken, to explore something unknown, that is the ancient wisdom stirring within you. Every moment when you knew exactly what to do, without knowing how you knew, that is the Atlantean mastery remembering itself through your consciousness. You do not need to learn this law so much as you need to remember it. You do not need to acquire this wisdom so much as you need to stop forgetting what you have always known. Tonight, when you close your eyes, I want you to see yourself standing once again in that great crystal temple. Feel the warm, living stone beneath your feet. Feel the light patterns dancing through the walls in response to your very presence. You are home. You have always been home. And from this place of remembering, every action you take in your modern world becomes a bridge between what was and what is yet to be. The crystal cities may have fallen, but the consciousness that built them lives on in you. The technologies may have been lost, but the understanding that made them possible pulses in your blood. The civilization may have transformed, but the love that sustained it for thousands of years beats in your heart. And so, inheritor of the ancient wisdom, keeper of the sacred flame, bridge between worlds, I call you now to your destiny. Step into the truth of who you are. Claim the mastery that is your birthright. Take up the golden key that has been waiting for your hand. The time of forgetting is over. The time of remembering has begun. Your manifestations are not distant dreams. They are inevitable realities waiting for your inspired action to call them into form. The universe is not indifferent to your desires. It is the very source of those desires, seeking to express itself through your unique gifts and vision. You are not a small, isolated being hoping for cosmic assistance. You are the cosmos itself, awakening to its own infinite creative power. Comment below. I align my actions with my destiny. And as you write those words, feel the truth they contain. Feel the ancient memories stirring. Feel the golden thread of your highest path beginning to sparkle with new light. The dance begins now. The adventure continues. The miracle is already in motion. Welcome home, Master. Welcome home.